I'd like to welcome you and without any waste of time, invite the Minister to read her briefing notes. Following it, we shall take questions. The Minister will be reading her statement, seeking on the floor. Accompanying the Minister is Generals and Colonels from the South African Air Force and from the South African Army. The Chief of the Army is representing the Chief of the South African National Defense Force General who is out of town on duty. Minister Nosiviwe, may I request that you give the statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members of the media and to all in attendance. This briefing is an extraordinary in that I've made a rare decision to appear before you to discuss and set the record straight on an operational matter clearly in the purview of the military command structures. I felt, however, that given the uncertainty and the need for reassurance of South Africans regarding an important matter of security and political accountability, that it will be the most responsible thing for us as the leadership to address the nation through yourselves. So, as extraordinary as it is, the necessity determined that we urgently convene this briefing. This follows recent media reports speculating about the circumstances and processes relating to the acquiring of an aircraft used by the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa during his recent official visit to Japan. As I've indicated before, it is not normal procedure and protocol for us to lay bare the operational planning related to the movement of a country's political principle. This is based on our key responsibility enshrined in the law to ensure the security of these principles. Our main responsibility to the country, its people and its leadership, as legislated, is national security, and our protocols and procedures ensure operational integrity that keeps us all of us safe. However, we remain accountable even within the scope if questions arise relating to our failure or perceptions thereof to effectively execute this mandate. So, that's why we are here, and it is important therefore to remind all of us that we may not be calling similar briefings on each of the normal operational planning and taskings for movement of the political principles. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, as only you can well be aware, various reports have been published making speculations and raising a number of questions relating to the aircraft acquired for the Deputy President during his recent official visit to Japan. Upon receiving the news of the reports, I obviously had been gravely concerned and had asked for a briefing and report on the matter through both the Chief of the South African National Defense Force and the Chief of the South African Air Force and the relevant squadron commanders responsible for such arrangements. In order to have a proper engagement with yourselves and to address some of the concerns raised in the public, we've decided to share the facts relating to this matter. The facts are as follows. The air travel and movement of the political principals, President and Deputy President of the Republic, is a mandated responsibility of the South African Air Force and is not handled by the Presidency or the principals. 2. A dedicated squadron of the South African Air Force is responsible for managing and tasking the movement of the principals, informed by the requirements that are indicated by the offices of the principals concerned. These requirements may include the number of passengers, nature of destination, and length of travel. 3. The VVIP squadron of the South African Air Force maintains and operates its own fleet of aircraft for purposes of this mandate. But if these are not available for any reason or not suitable for the specification requirements of a particular travel, a suitable aircraft may be chartered to be operated by the South African Air Force in execution of its responsibility. 4. For the recent visit of the Deputy President, the requirements were received by the Air Force. Two of the important requirements during this flight were that there must be a minimum of fuel stops en route and that there should be adequate rest facilities for the principal. For all flights requests, the first option is to consider a South African Air Force aircraft. The Boeing 737 BBJ of the Air Force, which meets all the requirements to be used for this flight, was however not available as this was being used by the President over the period. The only other aircraft close to meeting the requirements was the Falcon 900, but would have been required to make multiple stops and carried less passengers. It was also unavailable because it is out for maintenance. The other aircrafts, the VVIP squadron, which did not have either the range or the passenger capacity to do the flight. With none of the Air Force aircrafts available or suitable, the next option is to charter an aircraft. This can only be done via one of two options, namely a state charter contract of the National Treasury RT61 contract or via a process of open tenders. The RT61 National Treasury contract was specifically instituted to ease and speed up the process and is therefore the first option to use in such a short space of time. The RT61 contract is awarded and managed by National Treasury. The South African Air Force's only input in this process is to supply a user requirement specification. Once the contract has been awarded by National Treasury, the South African Air Force receives a list of contracted companies and aircraft types listed by registration number and the approved tariff per aircraft type. Each company on this list is awarded a number of points, and when an aircraft is chartered from the list, the company with the highest points must be approached first. Only if this company is unable to provide an aircraft may the next company be approached. On this specific flight, this procedure was followed. The first company on the list was approached, but the aircraft they had on the list could only complete the flight with multiple refueling stops and did not meet the requirement. The second company on the list, ExecuJet, was approached and they had the Global Express aircraft available, which could complete the flight with only one refueling stop as well as carry the required amount of passengers. This aircraft was subsequently chartered via the process as stipulated in the RT61 contract and handed over to the South African Air Force. The information provided to the Air Force on RT61 contract does not include ownership of the aircraft. I think I should emphasize this matter, that in your list of companies, the company which we selected in this instance is ExecuJet. And ExecuJet is a facilitator. ExecuJet apparently does not own aircrafts, but what it does is to secure aircrafts from different individuals or from different companies. And this is what happened in this instance, as it has happened in other instances. Now, I have been, however, informed following interrogation of the ownership, the ExecuJet itself doesn't own and operate, as I've said already. And of course, ExecuJet exercises the right of non-disclosure of the third parties' ownership of the aircrafts they make available on the RT61 contract. These are the matters that I've requested the Air Force verify and confirm in order for us to assess if any risk or compromise of security and integrity arises as a result of the current arrangements on the RT61, and to consider various options at our disposal to remedy such risks in consultation with National Treasury. In the medium to long term, the solution to many of these problems is to capacitate the South African Air Force with a dedicated fleet with enough capacity to meet both the transport and air defense capability requirements of the country. The staggered implementation of this plan is already in place and will be done in line with targets of milestone 1 of the implementation of the defense review. I will be providing details of this implementation plan as soon as it has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will open the floor for questions, and we all know the routine. I will take 3 questions per round, and you only nominate no more than 3 rounds because we have excuse the minister for another engagement. I will start with Erica Gibson.
My question relates to the transparency with how this contract is handled, even though one can understand that operational details are restricted before a flight. But in previous years, it was open to scrutiny in Parliament as well for oversight purposes. Why is that no longer the case?
Thank you. The gentleman who's
Good day, Honorable Minister. My name is John Musai. I'm with the African News Agency. Just to inquire from the Minister, there have been different reports about the costs of chartering this plane. Is the Minister prepared to share with us the cost of chartering the plane, please? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shai. Kim? Kim?
Thanks very much, Kim Alfresh, Defence Web. Minister, given that we appear to have major problems with air crews, what is going to be done? Are you going to recruit more full-time force? Will more use be made of reserve force? What is the situation there? Thank you.
I'll take the last one from Karen.
Minister Karen from the NCA. The first question is, has this particular plane, which is now referred to colloquially as Gupta Jet, to your knowledge, has it been utilised by government before in similar such instances? And also, you painted a picture that really there was not anything specifically untoward about what happened here. Why have you then felt the need to have this press conference to address these issues in this way? Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We will allow the Minister to respond.
Well, Erica, I'm not aware that this contract in the past was subjected to parliamentary scrutiny, so I don't want to give you an answer which is misleading. I'm not aware of that. But what I'm aware of is that this RT 61 contract is a contract which is run by National Treasury. And I think all of us, it's important, and I'm sure you know from your side, that once the Defence Force has determined the required specifications of the aircraft to be used by a principal, National Treasury then provides you with a list of available aircraft or aircraft which should be used of companies. And in this instance, this is what happened, as it has happened in the past as well. So when we were given this list, ours was to then look at the point system. The first company, which was number 1, because this one was number 2, ExecuJet, on the list. The first company could not provide an aircraft which would have 1 fuel stop. So we then went for a second one, and the second one was ExecuJet. Now, the ExecuJet is not obliged to disclose to us or to anybody who the owners of the aircraft are. And in any event, in our case here as the Defence Force, what we're interested in is to ensure the safety and the comfort of the principal. So sitting here, somebody says, I see nothing, it seems there's nothing untoward. In my view, there's nothing untoward because the necessary processes were followed. This contract is not even with us. The contract is with National Treasury. We did what was right, and on the side of the National Treasury, they responded accordingly. And of course, as I said, ExecuJet is not obliged to come to us and say, this particular aircraft, for instance, which we are securing for you, belongs to A. What is important is that the jet belongs to a company within the Republic of South Africa. So this parliamentary scrutiny then, I suppose if it was done before, maybe it's still being done through National Treasury. As I said, the contract is not run by the South African National Defence Force. I think what I'm trying to say, what is important, the message I'm driving home here is that in the manner in which we've dealt with this matter, we've not been reckless at all. In the same way that whenever we deal with matters of security, matters of safety and comfort of our principals, we have never been found wanting. We have never opted for situations where, for instance, we are not convinced about the security which will be provided to a principal. There's a matter about recruitment of crews. Kim, you are correct. Currently, the Defence Force has, the Air Force, through the Air Force, has trained a number of pilots. But of course, we've lost a significant number as well because people go out for greener pastures. Currently, our contract is 13 years. You sign a 13-year contract between the Air Force and the pilot. Even though we are responsible for producing these pilots, but beyond the 13 years, some of them have opted to leave the Air Force. And I have requested the Air Force to consider increasing the numbers, because if you look at the amount of time it takes for us to train a pilot, I think that it would be proper for us to increase the number of years in the contract with the concerned person. But equally, Kim, I don't know if you are aware of this, that much as people leave for greener pastures, because the greener pastures in this case, usually it's the financial resources. We also see now a number of pilots who are writing back to us who are saying, yes, it's good to be where we are, but it is very lonely. Can we come back to the South African National Defence Force? And this is one of the things which we are currently discussing, because my view is that if there are pilots who are ready to come back into this institution, we should then facilitate that. Truth of the matter is, indeed, we do rely in the main on the reserves. One of the biggest challenges we have, it's not as though we don't have people who are about to qualify, for instance, as pilots. Biggest challenges are the aircrafts, because you have to make sure before you can say this person is a fully fledged pilot, you would know better. But before the person can get what they call wings, the person must have flown X number of hours. And that is where, indeed, we fall short as the South African National Defence Force. Again, on this matter of recruitment of crews, I think I should also state to you, ladies and gentlemen, that one of the things we're trying to do, we're working very hard on training more pilots, on training engineers, on training technicians. Currently, we have a group which is out in Cuba, and hopefully when they come back in 5 years, we shall have a significant number of pilots. Obviously, that program does not seek to replace what we are currently doing here at home, but we're trying to increase the numbers of young people who can be readily available in 5 to 6 years. Of course, somebody will say, what's the immediate? What are the quick wins? For me, the quick wins are bringing back those who are keen to come back into the Air Force. Allow them to come back. But of course, whilst you are doing that, we should then be planning for the medium to the long term, which is that this training that we are providing. I know that there's another group which will be leaving now in September for training from both the Air Force and the Navy, and I'm very happy to announce this, that much as we have this big number in Cuba, we now have another big number which will be going to Russia for training as pilots. We are also looking at Ethiopia within the continent here for training of our young people as pilots. Now, I guess on that note then, Carol, the matter of whether the aircraft belonged to a company owned by the Guptas is neither here nor there on this particular matter. The point is, ExecuJet provided an aircraft to us, and ExecuJet was under no obligation to disclose the details of who owns the aircraft. What is important to us, was to make sure that we get an aircraft which is comfortable, was to get an aircraft which would stop once for refueling, so that you don't have several stops in an aircraft where you are carrying a principal. That is all. So on the side of the Defence Force, there was no undermining of accountability processes to South Africans because now the issue is about the relationship of the past with the people concerned. Really, what we are dealing with here now has nothing to do with that, and I think it's important that you as media should assist to explain these matters to South Africans, because South Africans rely on you for information. And if you give them accurate information as we are providing to you, then South Africans will be empowered to engage, knowing fully about the circumstances which would have led to us acquiring this particular aircraft for this trip. So we can't go out to South Africans and explain. We can only do this through you, the media. Then, of course, there was the matter of the cost of the aircraft, and I've taken note of the fact that out there already there's a lot of speculation about the cost, that the cost is ±5 million, and Colonel Anekom will explain to you at this point that, in fact, even if we had used our own aircraft, if we had one, the cost would have been nearly that amount of money. Can you explain that? Yes.
As the Minister said, as far as the cost is concerned, you've got two sets of costs involved. The aircraft itself, plus then the services required to get the aeroplane there. So in terms of chartering an aeroplane, we pay for the aeroplane as well as the crew. The rest of the cost is carried by the Air Force as we would have done with any of our aeroplanes. When we do charter an aeroplane, that aeroplane is handled exactly the same as any of our own aeroplanes. We only pay the company for the aircraft, the money, the crew and the insurance. The rest is as for any said aeroplane. And therefore, the cost between chartering an aeroplane and doing the flight with our own aeroplane would actually have been minimal, because we pay for our own aeroplane roughly the same as what they pay for the chartered aeroplane.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Minister. The last round. The gentleman with the camera in front of you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Francis Loma-Chapman from Progressive Independent News Agency. You seem to be saying there is nothing untoward in procuring the aircraft. Is that an independent view, or is the view from within the SANDF? And if not, don't you think it is relevant and important to actually to investigate if there is nothing untoward from outside independent source?
Thank you. Let's look for a fresh face if there isn't. The lady.
Minister Nosiviwe from Eyewitness News. According to my understanding, the Defence Force or the Air Force oversees specifications around security of the flights, and whereas the country's intelligence services would then, in the security aspect of it, do checks to see who owns the aircraft. Can the Minister really, with all sincerity, guarantee that no one in cabinet, in government, in the presidency knew that this aircraft belongs to a company believed to belong to the Guptas?
Thank you, Bentile. Karen, and then Erika, then we close.
Minister, just to follow up from my colleague's question, you've been at pains to say that the ownership of the jet wasn't established. Can that be an argument made in terms of national security and the security of a principal like the Deputy President? Can it really be argued that you would not have known who the owner was? And had you known, according to you, who the owner was, would you have chosen another plane, or would you have done exactly the same thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Erika.
Erika Gibson from Bill. Minister, my question comes back to the training and the availability of pilots. The problem at 21 Squadron is the shortage of commanders. There's a number of pilots, but they're not qualified as commanders. Part of their training to qualify is the simulation training abroad. All the simulation training, with the exception of, I think, one this year, has been cancelled, even though it's been booked years ahead of time, and that the Air Force has budgeted for that. With more commanders, there will be a bigger option of people available to fly the aircraft available. Why has the simulation training, and that the same amount at 28 Squadron, which the Americans pay for, why is the simulation training not taking place?
Thank you very much, Minister.
Okay. Let me start with the last one, Erika. I've heard about this from somebody from the 21 Squadron. I don't know where it comes from. What I do know that I'm the final authority who signs all of the submissions for traveling arrangements. And I'm aware that this year we have had quite, it may not necessarily be the number which people expect, to travel, but almost every week I sign submissions, and I'm sure Terali Yengen is here to assist me. We can actually provide you with numbers of people who've traveled between the beginning of this financial year up to now, who have gone to America for this simulation exercise. Of course,
that was the Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula giving a press briefing on the use of the jet, or the Gupta jet, as some suggest. Let's take a break.